Click record. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Again, today we are talking about part 3. Love with limits is the header. It's the way that I frame consequences and connection. But we're going to talk about behavior modification and reward strategies to transform unhelpful behavior into positive coping and cooperation. And so we're going to be getting precisely into the very topics that are in the title. The title is as specific as a table of contents. And this book excerpts portions of my social emotional guidebook. This slide will be up later. We do not have an in-person component today, but if you want to purchase it online, there's that left QR code. So I'll leave this up for a moment as I introduce myself. So I am an art therapist. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania, and I have been working with neurodiverse kids since the year 2000. When they found me, they started coming to my office. I didn't know how to treat them, and by process of researching, reading, anything that I could, weaving that into my group art therapy experiences, and that led to the creation of the Art of Friendship social coping program. And then later, we also blew that out and sort of transformed that into a therapeutic social skills summer camp named Camp Pegasus. All of the things that I'm teaching you today, I've taught to undergraduate staff at the camp program, to parents and caregivers, and I also consult with schools and the summer camp community. So here is the book. And so the heading title is Love with Limits. And if you picture your child or a child, they're sort of like a plant, they're a tree. And we know that plants require both sunshine, sunlight, as well as rain. And so I have those two symbols up top. The love is warmth, right? It's the sunshine, warmth, connection, right? Positivity, encouragement, but also limits. And so those drops of rain might also represent sort of tears, so to speak, or sort of some of the frustration that can come when kids receive limits. But it's important for children to receive limits, and we're going to talk precisely about why in a moment. Now, each child needs these ingredients in just the right measure for them. Some kids who are super rule following, very sedentary kids, they are not limit pushers or boundary pushers. They might just need more of the warmth side, the love side and encouragement, and they barely need a limit to be set, just occasional guidance here and there. Other kids are more driven, boundary pushing, impulsive. They might need more limits and guidance, but one should never forget the other side. Because if you're only giving limits, that child is starving. They're withering because they just feel like they're in a military boot camp. So love with limits is sort of the theme or thesis of what we're talking about today. And in my book, I developed 4 key ingredients in supporting the neurodiverse child or student or camper. And so, again, these approaches really can be adapted to the home setting or group learning or group social settings as well. And so I call it the ARCH method of social coping skills training because it really envelops, it overarches a child's whole functioning and really wraps its arms around the child's world. And so the ARCH is an acronym, and it stands for these 4 components. We're going to delve the most into the H, but I'll overview them. So the A is anticipate and teach. So we want to understand what each child needs, sort of, so collectively, what do neurodiverse kids need in general, and what does your child need in terms of their profile, their wiring. And then we're going to build their skills. Let's teach them what they need to understand about the world, how the world works, what's expected in different social situations and social skills. And let's provide structure to help them get the most out of their lives, to engage the most comfortably with we can decrease anxiety and decrease some of the stressors that make it harder to engage. So that's anticipate and teach. Let's think about what they need and give it to them, structure-wise and skill-building-wise. Then your child is out in their world, and they are now living their life, school, camp, wherever they are, home. And life is a social skills program. Life is social skills anywhere your child goes. And so the R and the C in the ARCH method have to do with how we engage with your child while they are navigating, while they're living their lives. And so the R is critical because we are going to reinforce and reward. We're creating positive feedback cycles because children only, or people of all ages and of all needs, only develop skills with practice and reinforcement, right? And that's what leads to mastery. Repeat and repeat until it becomes a new positive habit. But you can't punish or lecture a child into new skills. So that's what the R is for. We're going to reinforce and reward. The C is compassionate social coaching. So on the back end, assuming all kids are social learners, but especially neurodiverse kids are navigating the world and they're doing their best. But how can we help them learn from their social experiences without crushing their spirits, right? Because the negative cycles that kids are in is constant correction, constant criticism. Get back in your seat, back in your seat. That was inappropriate. Say you're sorry. So you'll see that the neurodiverse child is often receiving uncompassionate coaching and correction. So we want to do that in a compassionate way, and I'll touch on that today, but that's not the deeper focus of today. If you would like to learn about the R and the C, and deeper into the A, I have other videos on my YouTube channel, and there's going to be a slide about that with a QR code for you. And finally, the H is going to be our deep focus today, creating a holding environment, which has to do with limits and boundaries. All children need healthy limits and boundaries, again, in just the right measure for their temperament and their wiring. But I'm going to provide you a number of strategies and solutions for that today. Here's the slide about the Art of Friendship YouTube channel. Please explore it. There are all sorts of videos about how you can support your child, and whether you're a professional or a caregiver. And so you can explore that and look for all the different opportunities there. We have videos on coping with anger, anxiety, negative and depressive thinking, and more deeper dives into the ARC and the H of the ARCH. All right. But today, the focus is the holding environment, that H. And so we're going to be talking about deal breaker behaviors, behaviors that are just not okay. How do we handle them? Natural and logical consequences. How can you really strategically use them in just the right time and in just the right way to achieve the goals that you have for your child? And we're going to give you a decision-making plan for limit setting, when to do it. But first, let's talk about babies and swaddling babies. So these pictures capture what the H is in the ARCH. So it's a therapeutic holding environment. 𝗍𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗃, a classic child developmental theorist, a psychologist from back in the 20th century, came up with this concept. And it has to do with, if we start thinking about an infant, a newborn, they are swaddled, right? They're wrapped tight. And why are they wrapped up like that? Because their nervous system is immature. It's not fully baked when they come out. And so if an infant is not swaddled, their limbs are kind of spastic, and they have all these instincts, right? And so their nervous system is jumpy, and then they cry. You'll see that they can be more irritable, they're uncomfortable, they're anxious. But then when they are swaddled, wrapped tight, they feel more secure, and their nervous system is calmer. They can rest more easily. So being wrapped up, being held. Okay, so now being held provides a sense of safety and security. It's like a bird's nest that cradles the baby birds. They're not going to fall out of the tree. That's the design of the bird's nest. They can be fed there, right? Also, so a holding environment structure creates order and predictability. So in a world for the neurodiverse child that's very confusing, disordered, right? Kind of the chaos theory of the world, and they may have a hard time naturally kind of organizing. So when we provide structure, it organizes. It makes things more clear for them, which again decreases anxiety, increases their ability to engage, right? And so it goes from disorganized to organized. And we know that anxiety is a big driver of impulsiveness. Someone feels anxious, there's a shot of stress or anxiety, they get stressed, there's an impulse to do something. Well, what am I going to do? And it might make people act before they think. So it exacerbates any anxiety that your child already has. So let's provide structure and decrease it. So here is my sort of schematic, or sort of a visual analogy to a child's brain, and what a holding environment, what structure is. A classic art therapy theorist and writer calls structure a framework for freedom, which I love, and I'm going to explain it visually here. So here we have this drawing, this little scribble is the beginning of a young child's brain, or the child of a neurodiverse person, someone who doesn't have really strong executive functioning. So here, there's one sort of loose thought. Here's another, right? So here's a few kids who are all interacting in space. So they're on this page, and this page is wide open. Man, that's a lot of space to cover. They could spin this way, they could spin that way. And so structure is beginning to organize space and create some containment. And so the way I imagine containment and structure is the outside barrier are deal breaker behaviors. So we're going to create the field of play. So, if you're in bounds, if you're inside this field of play, then that's where socialization, that's where life can happen. So what are the absolute deal breakers that are not okay? Usually safety things. So on the left, we see eloping or running away into dangerous places. Physical hurting, the bottom line is emotional hurting, right? So verbal aggression or abuse. And on the right, persistent non-compliance, or disruptive behaviors. And so this creates the box, and this framework is what helped the staff at Camp Pegasus thrive and know exactly, what behaviors were okay, what behaviors were in bounds. Everything that's in bounds requires social coaching. Okay, anything that reaches the boundary lines, they should not be crossed. And so this is a part of our guidance. So think about this. We're creating some deal breaker behaviors. These are not okay. So what would be a deal breaker behavior in your home if you're a caregiver, in your school, or if you're an educator? Next, think about ways to also, back up. The space is still wide open and the kids are all bouncing off of each other with my scribbly lines. So now, take a look. We're going to start to shrink the space. We're going to create these horizontal stripes, which represents scheduling. Let's create some schedules. What comes first, second, third, fourth? This is an example. So in our summer program, every child, every camper had a lanyard with their name on one side and on the back that they could decorate. And then on the back, they had a visual schedule. It was tucked into their plastic lanyard sleeve. And so we went from the first year where kids were asking all day, what's next? What's next? How long till the next activity? When is lunch? All these questions, which actually revealed their anxiety. As soon as we implemented this, the staff could say, check your lanyard, check your schedule. They looked and they became independent with it. And they learned that they could look at that anytime. And so that decreased the anxiety. They sort of knew what came next. And with it being permanent, the asking check decreased, and we noticed that kids barely even looked at it. It helped them to memorize the schedule better when it was concrete in front of them. So now this wide open space became, broken down to this degree. Let's add a little more structure. Rules, right? Adding rules, that creates the vertical lines. And now look, now there's these little boxes, these little compartments that help kids to know exactly where they are at any given time. So that also creates swaddling, because we're not going to swaddle our 11-year-olds, our 17-year-olds. We are going to create swaddling. We're going to put the holding environment, the H, with rules and schedules and expectations. Okay. So that's sort of the big picture, the satellite view of what we're talking about. So social skill training and support for neurodiverse kids, really these approaches work for all of the diagnoses below, but also kids who are neurotypical. And what we discovered, certainly coming out of COVID, is that social skills are for everyone. And what's good for the neurodiverse child is actually good for all children. Structure, knowing what's expected, the boundaries, clarity. And so now this is for you. What is the ideal social skills trainer mindset? Now, wherever you are, if you are on this webinar, you must be a social skills trainer, whether you've adopted or accepted that identity or not. There's someone in your care who really could benefit from this. And so if you try to adopt this, you want to move to an educational and developmental model. We do not want to be about control and containment. That's old school. That's 20th century, 19th century, right? Sit down, be quiet. We don't want to hear from you. That was inappropriate. Say you're sorry, like harsh, quick correction. And so instead, we want to view every social miscue as a learning opportunity, because that reveals some gap in the child's understanding of the social expectations or a gap in their skills, and it might make it hard for them to engage, which causes them stress. So we can help to decrease their stress by teaching, by making everything educational, which also decreases shame. It's kind of a growth mindset. It's a good thing. Everyone's learning the social world, because social is messy. The social world is not neat and pristine like a precision watch. Second big piece that you should have in your head as you're moving forward with supporting a child or doing social skills training is to lead with empathy and compassion. Social is hard. Social is hard. For the neurodiverse person to go out into the world, navigate their school day, right, which requires constant flexibility. There's transitions every so often. And then during any unstructured times, there's the negotiation of space. And during recess, play ideas. What do you want to play? What do I want to play? Your child can't get their way all the time, and things don't always go as they need. And so that demands a significant outlay of social and emotional energy and self-control. So there's fatigue. There's something called autistic burnout is now a thing that's becoming more clearly understood, that people with autism can burn out short-term, like in a day, or sometimes over time. It can be like a longer-term burnout where they have a hard time just putting the next foot in front of them socially and going out to navigate the world, because the world has sort of overtaxed them. So building in break opportunities, ways to refuel and recharge is really important, and to collaborate and find out what your child needs. So educational developmental model, where everything's a learning opportunity, and empathy for how it can be hard. All right, so now that's all the preamble. Let's get into social skills training. All right, so to begin, it's critical that you know the difference between increased behaviors and decreased behaviors. Now, an increased behavior is a behavior that you would like to see your child do more of or start doing. And then therefore, a decreased behavior would be the opposite. That's a behavior you want to see your child do less of or stop doing. And it's important to know these two definitions, because if you are using decreased behavior strategies for increased behaviors, you're going to thwart your child's expansion of social skills. So we're going to talk about specifically what you do at each point. Right. So increased behaviors requires positive replacement behaviors and reinforcement. Come on, you got this. That was great. That was really helpful. So rewards, reinforcement. On the other hand, decreased behaviors require clear no rules. Okay, please don't do that. Not okay. This is what okay. This is what's not okay. So creating clear limits and also predictable consequences. And that's very much what we're going to be talking about the rest of our time together today. Okay, so here we go. Here we're going to talk in a few brief notes about the A and the R and the C before we get into H. So once again, if we are going to be talking about behavior today, one of the pieces of the educational model is to help your child understand social cause and effect. This is one of the critical social gaps that can occur across diagnoses under the neurodiversity umbrella: ADHD, autism, learning differences, linking my behavior to other people's reactions, right? Action, reaction. There's often a real cutoff and there's a misunderstanding in this population on that. So we want to do direct instruction and teach that. So this is the A, right? Anticipate and teach. So if then, here's a typical poster that we have in my program. You can see top left, we have this teeter-totter. One little potato guy jumps down on the left, which makes the one on the right go flying up, right? So that's one of Newton's laws. For every action, there's an equal reaction. Well, we have a formula for that. So socially, if I act blank, then kids will think something about me. They'll feel something about me, or they'll do something. For kids younger than 8, forget the bottom 2 lines, feel and do. Just stick with kids will think something about me. What do you want? How do you want people to think about you? Do you want people to think good things about you or bad things about you? If you're talking about consequences, behavior and consequences, you want to have that last one. If I act blank, then blank will happen. What's the do? There will be a response, but you might get a consequence. And so you can see that behavior line has the little golden coloring. That's the golden line. And it's kind of like Mad Libs. And if your child can put really helpful behaviors in that golden line, we want to reward, we want to reinforce, life is good. If they put really unhelpful or disruptive or hurtful behaviors in the golden line, then maybe there could be consequences to help to shape that as needed, depending on the nature of the behavior. Certainly, it could be social coaching. So if then, and you can use this formula, if I act blank, then kids will blank, proactively before your child goes into a new social setting. And you can also use it on the back end. After a behavior, if a behavior didn't work out, if someone had an unfortunate reaction to your child's behavior, you can plug that scenario in there and say, ooh, look what happened. When you did blank, then did you see that reaction? How did they think about you right then? How did they make them feel? Oh man, what did they say to you? Did you like that? No. So then you can ask on the back end, what more helpful behavior could you put in that golden line, that behavior line, that can actually get the reaction that you want? And so get great reactions. You have the power. So this is both social cause and effect, and this is agency. Your child can make positive decisions to make their lives better on a daily basis. Also in the A of the arch, anticipate and teach, I want to suggest that you write expectations, and I call them do rules, because these are things you want to see the child do and do more of. And so you want to put it in behavioral terms. Tell your child or write exactly what it is you want to see or hear them do. So for instance, do follow directions the first time you're asked. Do use a kind words and voices, right? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, instead of cursing, insults, whatever else. So use kind words and voices. These become a North Star for your child to move towards. This is their guide as you write them, and I also encourage that you publish them. Do include others in your conversations. And then, so I write the do in parentheses just to help you generate these expectations in a positive formulation, but that's not great English. So this is what it looks like at camp. And we would read our rules, our published and written out rules every morning to launch the camp day. Because we're advertising something, right? Your child is like a consumer and you are the advertising company. What are we selling? We're selling more effective social functioning, decreased stress, decreased negative reactions from peers. So 1, follow directions. Grown-ups must be in charge. So do in front of that, right? Do keep hands and feet to yourself, even if you are mad. But you'll see there's a no there. There's a no rule. No hitting, kicking, pushing, or biting. We're going to talk about no rules when we talk more about consequences and rewards. Consequences, I mean. Okay? So write and publish your rules. Put them up on the fridge. Put them up in your classroom. These are the things that we are looking for. And there's no hard consequence if they don't reach this. But we do want to give kids credit and reinforce it when they do. Right? So for the do rules, there's no harm. There's no shaming or punitive moments if the kids forget to do one of these once in a while. But let's keep this in front of the consumer. So that's the A in the arch, is teach social awareness, teach social skills, and let's proactively plan, let's create this do rules list. Then your child goes out into their world, and they are now living their life wherever they go. If you take them, if they're at school, if you're at a birthday party, wherever it is, and there's people around, social's happening. So we want to do the R, which is to reinforce. So we're going to talk about, we're going to touch on TPR, targeted positive reflection. But today's topic is using a reward system. So here is social training in a nutshell, in one image. Essentially, your task in being a social trainer, supporting your child, is to do the left side first on this balance scale, right? So here's the scale. So the default is, okay, we're going to reinforce, catch them every time they're doing something that's helpful and positive, give them credit for that. Oh, something just went wrong. We're going to tip the scale to social coaching, which we're going to mention in a moment. And then as soon as you're done social coaching, we want to tip it right back to reinforcement. These are your two tasks all day long, all lifelong for your child. And so you're just toggling between these two. So we're going to continue with the increased behaviors. So here's the skill that I talk about a lot more in part 1 of this series about creating positive cycles. So you can look that up on my YouTube channel. And again, there's going to be a QR code at the end for that. So give TPR, targeted positive reflection. So you see your child's behavior and you say it. Make sure that it comes out of your mouth. So, and you want to comment on and give them credit for any social moments that are really helpful. Positive coping habits or coping efforts. Great job taking that break. That was awesome, right? You stepped back. Oh, I saw you used your coping strategy from therapy. That was awesome. Give them credit whenever they're doing something positive. I have so many clients and campers who came to me and said, I never get credit. No one ever gives me credit for any of the good stuff that I do. They only catch me messing up. They're only criticizing me. And that's very much the experience of the neurodiverse population. So here we're reversing that. We're inverting it. We're stopping those negative cycles. And secondary benefit, important benefit, is we're now reinforcing social behavior, coping efforts. You can do this at homework time. Yeah, way to stick with it. You are really focused today. Keep up the good work. Man, you studied so hard for that test. You are really prepared. So you can give TPR for work habits. And also you want to reinforce their decisions and choices, which is agency. Okay, so their decisions and choices would be like, you chose to do that. You changed your mind. You decided to take a break. You decided to work that out together. So you decided, you chose, or you changed your mind. Emphasizes for your child, when they hear that kind of TPR, that positive reflection, you're giving them credit, and it's taking a snapshot of that moment, like the image on the screen, and it's like, we just made that moment real. We validated it by you commenting on it. And so TPR alone can create positive reinforcement cycles. You can give high fives, hugs, belly bumps, like they do in football after a touchdown. You can do an airborne belly bump. It's fun, a little dangerous. And so here are just a couple of quick scripts for you for TPR. Again, we do a deeper dive in the other video. And but it's all about you. So if you're trying to give TPR, if you can lead with the word you, already you're talking about the child. You're a team for fun. You are playing so closely together. Wow. Unbelievable. You invited them to play. Awesome. So you give them credit for the social moment. Conversation skills. What a great conversation question. Way to bounce the conversation to your friend. What a follow-up question. You were so curious. That was great. So follow-up questions, conversation questions, reciprocal, bouncing the conversation instead of one-sided. Anytime that happens, let your child know that you appreciated that. That was really helpful. Take a snapshot of it with TPR. Also, when kids use helpful social language, that's pragmatic language. Way to stick up for yourself. Awesome compromise. Wow. So because compromise usually requires words and language, and so you worked that out. You used your words. Anything that you see your child doing that is helpful in the social arena, helping your family working well with siblings, or if you're in a professional setting with kids at summer camp, or if you're at school, give them credit. So again, that alone can stand alone in its own right, TPR. Now, if a child has some sticky behaviors, there are certain really critical social skills or coping skills that you would love to see your child start to practice, but they're just having a hard time getting unstuck, to practice it, to get to do it the first time and second time, then we might overlay a reward system. Now, what I came up with in my office 24 years ago, and certainly we used it in our social skills program for the last 24 years, and then at Camp Pegasus, was the mindful, sloppy, relationship-based, and carnival-style reward system. Okay? And so, man, there are a lot of adjectives there for a reason, because this is not an anal sticker chart that everyone's going to give up on. And sticker charts have there's a lot of things that are wrong with sticker charts that make them not the most successful, unless you're doing a very specific thing like using a potty, or it's a very discrete behavior, or staying in your bed the whole night, staying in your room the whole night instead of coming out multiple times. So, but for all kinds of social behavior, real-time feedback is critical, and that's what this allows you to do, building on TPR. Here's why it's mindful. So you're going to create a real-time token reward system for home or classroom or at camp. So once again, TPR, say what you see and hear. You want to match the intensity with your voice. So if a child, let's say your child has been working on walking away from a conflict, instead of getting aggressive, getting angry and hitting, hey, take a break, go to your calm spot, take deep breaths, whatever it is. So the first time your child does it, that's an exciting moment. That's a breakthrough moment. So you can be enthusiastic, have your voice match the moment. You did it, that was incredible. You took that break, right? And then I would give tokens. Again, so in our programs, we use paper clips because they're small and easy to give out, and they're also easy to replace when they're lost. But you can also use funny money. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So you did it, you took that break. And then I would give tokens randomly, but usually matching my enthusiasm for the moment. If this was a huge deal, I'm going to give them a big sloppy handful of the tokens, of the chips that we call them, or bucks, right? And we're going to create 3 levels of prizes. So the matching the intensity, this is relationship-based, right? So this reward system is in the context of your relationship. Yes, you did it. I'm so happy about that. I am proud of you. You did it. Come on, more of that, right? Rah, rah. So relationship-based. Sloppy is that you're giving tokens randomly. So there could be 1, there could be like 2 or 3, whatever. They come out at different amounts, just whatever you grab. And then if there's a super breakthrough moment, then you can give a big bonus pile of bucks or tokens, right? So it's sloppy, which we know in behaviorism actually helps the subject to work more consistently and more readily. They never know what's coming. And then carnival style, we're going to make this like Dave and Buster's, or it's like they're going to a carnival, 3 levels of prizes if you can, right? So this is what it looks like. So if you wanted to make this at home on, pretty inexpensive to do, take a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, fold it 3 times, half, half, and half. You're going to wind up with 8 rectangles. Draw boundary lines. You can make a little structure. That's what I have these circles, because in U.S. dollars, U.S. money, there's always a circle with a president's face in the middle. So here's the structure, okay, and then your child can design it, color it in. They can make it any way that they want, and we can call it something fun. It could be fun bucks. One family calls it bendy bucks, for bendy being flexible. Some people call it Mike money, Kathy cash. So you can make it an alliteration if it works with your child's name. So you design the bucks. Then you photocopy about 10 to 12 copies of the original, and you cut them out. So now you have 80 to the 90s of these bucks. In the morning, where you shove them in your pockets or in your bag, and you have them with you whenever you're with your child, and you give your TPR and you're adding bucks, you're giving bucks. Then you keep sort of a central bank of bucks in a public place in wherever you are, home or school, where your kids, or they can get all involved in the intrigue of how many do we have. This is so exciting, right? So they want access to the bucks. You're giving them randomly, and you're giving them especially enthusiastically if there's a breakthrough. So you create the bucks, cut them out, and here we go. So now you're ready to give them out. Now you're also creating 3 levels of prizes. And so now this prizes always have to be in the context of your family values. Okay, so that means, there's small prize, medium prize. Some families want to do food prizes. Some families insist no food prizes, just activities. Sleepover with cousins. Some say, well, we don't mind food prizes. What about monetary prizes or material like toys? Hey, let's go on a trip to Five Below. You can get bonus iPad time. But you want to work it out with your child, but ultimately it's the adult that has to approve. You always have the right of last refusal to make sure that any prizes that you approve are within your values, and they're also within a reasonable price range. I had one client who said, I want a remote control helicopter, and they were like $90 some, and so the parent said, little high. And then as far as assigning amounts, if it's a very young child, it could be like 10, 20, 30. If it's older elementary, it could be 20, 40, 60, 33, 66, 99, whatever you want. I would just suggest early on, you want to hook the child. So don't make it too hard to get a prize early. Let them get a couple prizes, and then you can say, wow, you're getting so good at this. We're going to give you a little more of a challenge. We're going to make this more challenge, and then you just up the amounts. This is also flexible in that once a child achieves a certain reward, they might get bored of that. You can replace it. Hey, let's work together on a new one. We got ice cream as a medium prize last time. What do you want to do instead? What would be a good new medium prize? So now the kids are all in thinking about, oh, what prize am I saving up for? They're going and counting their bucks. And so now we really have sort of ramped up this idea that the child's working towards something. And so the effect of this is it makes that child that's stuck or resistant just think a little more about each behavior that they do, and that it motivates them to just try just a little harder to use some of the skills. Now you can give your TPR and bucks for everyday things. Remember the do rules. You can say $3 anytime you do one of the do rules, $5, whatever you want to do, right? So you can add more emphasis if there are specific behavioral goals that you're going for, but there's no consequence if the child doesn't do one of the do rules. Okay, in this, a child should never lose bucks. We're going to use other consequences. This is absolutely appropriate for 5-year-olds. This is absolutely appropriate for 5-year-olds. Yes. You want to just make do rules very simple and maybe have images if they're not yet readers. And same thing. So on the prizes, if your child's not a reader, you might print a picture of an iPad and put that in the small prize. Print out a picture of an ice cream cone and put that in the medium prize, that kind of thing. So make it visual so that they know what they're working towards. But yeah, you can adapt it easily for 5-year-olds. And it's fun. Let's have some fun with this. We can have playful solutions to serious problems. Last note on this is I suggest that you give out prizes, earned prizes on a weekend, because I've had some clients over the years who would get it like on a Wednesday at 7:45. It's like 15 minutes before bedtime. They got their buck threshold and they said, all right, we're going for ice cream. And then it led to a new tantrum because the child was expecting to get the prize as soon as they reach the threshold. But if you say, okay, any prizes are going to be cashed in on the weekend, that gives you 2 whole days to plan for it, within 2-day weekend. Oh, we have time on Saturday morning, Sunday afternoon. You can figure out the best time to do it. and that's an expectation. So it decreases unexpected tantrums on something that's supposed to be positive, right? We don't want to undo the positivity of this reward cycle because we are in do rules. And so we're going to talk about so that was R. We're going to mention compassionate social coaching, but really, again, that's a topic for another day, and there's another video on the YouTube channel for that. And so compassionate social coaching is done in question form, and asking the child it's very facilitative getting the child to think about what happened as opposed to the very direct wagging your finger. That was inappropriate, say you're sorry. Instead, we say, ooh, take a look at her face. Does she look happy or sad? What can you do to help her get back to fun? That's a teaser. We don't have time to get into that today, but that's what happens in the C, in compassionate social coaching and problem solving. But now let's dive into this that some people find a little bit complicated, but I hope to present it in a simple way so that you can really take certain parts of this and employ it in your life, later today, this weekend. All right, so a holding environment. We defined that earlier. We're going to talk about deal breaker behaviors, natural and logical consequences, and a decision-making plan for when to set limits. And of course, the whole purpose of this is to wrap our arms around your child and help them to decrease anxiety. And once again, we're talking about decreased behaviors. So these are behaviors you want the child to stop doing or do less of. We want to fade it so we can achieve that with some clear no rules, limits, and consequences. So, all right, let's shape behavior in 360 degrees. Okay, so to give limits and boundaries, think about the big picture for a moment. Reminder, this is a teaching model. This is not pain and torture. Punishment is, supposed to impose pain. None of that. It's a teaching model. So we're teaching life skills such as what is acceptable emotional coping. You're entitled to have any feeling that you want, but is it okay to throw something across the room, to break things, to hurt someone? No. Right? So what's the behavior that's not okay? We're not consequencing feelings. We want to be very clear about that. We're teaching life skills such as socialization. What are okay social behaviors to navigate society acceptably and not cross certain boundaries that might get you in big trouble later, potentially with the law if you violate someone's rights. So interpersonal boundaries, right? And so how do we accomplish that? With coaching and problem-solving conversations, which is the guidance in love and limits, and firm, logical, and consistent discipline and boundaries. So we're going to WPP, write, publish, and post your expectations. So write them down. Once again, just like the do rules, these are no rules. So you can see no talking back. But unlike do rules, anytime you write a no rule, you must write a positive replacement behavior. So if your child talks back a lot, you can make a rule, no talking back. But then the do rule is just say, okay, or I hear you. Okay. You might disagree. You're entitled to disagree with my directions or my point, but we're going to decrease all the talking back and all the arguing. No hitting or kicking, not okay in our house. Instead, walk away and take your break. Right? So for every no, there needs to be a positive replacement behavior because we can't just ask a child to stop doing something that they're doing because they don't have anything else to do instead. In a vacuum, without knowing what else that they should aim towards, they're going to revert back to old habits, and then we're going to be frustrated. So any no rule must come with a positive replacement behavior. No insult or hurtful speech. Consider others' feelings and choose nothing, neutral, or nice. So that could be one for an older child. There's a lot of language in there, so that's one for an older child. Okay. And here's an example of a no rule from our camp rules. No interrupting. But then it follows with a do rule, wait your turn to talk, and back in COVID times, mute your microphone until it's time, when we were doing some virtual social skills work. Okay, so that's an example. So create the no rules. Okay, all right, good. So now you have certain no's that are established. I would say for a preschooler, up to age, 7, no more than 3. So prioritize. What are the 3 biggest deal breakers that you want to fade or eliminate in your house if possible? 8 years old and older, maybe you can do up to 5, but I wouldn't do more than 5. It's too much to maintain in memory anyway. But again, write them, publish them, and post them. WPP. Put them up on the fridge. If you're in a school, put them on the wall. This is what's expected. Okay. So the default is, we don't want to be a police state. Love and limits. So on the warmth side, let's look for opportunities to say yes. For any behavior that doesn't bother anyone, doesn't really hurt the family or the school, the classroom's functioning, let's do targeted ignoring. Let that go. There's no need to comment on that, because there are so many opportunities to coach someone and to correct them. So that can really grind a child's spirit. So default setting, when kids are calm, if they're engaged and they do a social miscue, no harm, no foul. So targeted ignoring. And that's where you can give your TPR, right? We're looking to give TPR. We're going to build out all these positives that the kids are doing. But then, when to say no and set limits, you're going to pick your battles. It's absolutely appropriate to go to the mat for health and safety, right? Child's heading towards the street, freeze! But we have a strong, clear voice for that. But also, health and safety can include bedtime, brushing teeth, these kind of things. These are non-negotiables. For older kids, you can teach them this term, non-negotiable. I can be flexible about all these things, but certain things are non-negotiable because it's health, helping them to understand what's expected. You should also say no if there are certain behaviors that are loosening a family's control and order, running ahead dangerously. Or if you're in a classroom setting and someone's sitting super far away from the group without permission, it might make other kids want to sit farther away. They're probably not getting what they need. Again, that's impacting someone. So I would set limits on that. Certainly misusing property, being rough, being destructive, but also misusing property can include not getting off of technology in time, right? You tell the child, okay, get ready for bedtime, time to get ready for bed, transition to bedtime, and they're on for another half hour, making themselves eventually not get enough sleep and have a harder day the next day. That's an example of misusing property. More on that when we get to consequences. Misusing people, same idea. If you're being mean to someone, should you still have access to them? Should you get 5 more shots at them before I set limits? No. So misusing property, misusing people, and also we can set limits for certain social training, but we do that with social coaching. Okay. So when to give love and limits. So this is sort of my mental expectation. Now, teaching and learning model, right? For consequences, for if, then, action, reaction. So important for your child to get this. So use this poster. If I act blank, then blank will happen. If I break a rule on our no list, then you'll get this consequence. If, then. So this is a teaching model. And what it's going to do is increase your child's responsibility for their behaviors and increase their accountability. Okay. Oh, I did that. So if they go, you're mean. You just gave me a consequence. You're being so mean to me. Well, it's if then. If you do this, then this happens. So that's you. So you did that. And that's important for the child to learn out in the world so they don't get in potentially big trouble. What are we teaching? If you do X, then Y happens. Another way of saying it, again, for older kids, middle school, high school, you choose to have a consequence when you do X. Essentially, you're choosing that consequence. I'm choosing to get a ticket if I do 75 in a 35-mile-per-hour street, right? I'm choosing that consequence. I'm choosing to risk that consequence if there happens to be a policeman with a radar gun. So you can choose the consequence, or you can invite the outcome you want. What outcome do you want? Do you want to keep all of your privileges? Do you want to have this consequence or no? You decide. Listen to the language we're using, and if then. Invite the outcome that you want. Now, consequences must be predictable. They must be predictable. I can't underline that enough. And then they should only be given if they are anticipated, announced, and published, right? If it's a known kind of classroom rule, family rule. And kids are going to be creative and come up with all new behaviors all the time that, we didn't have a rule for. Well, I would assert that you can't give them a consequence for that the first time, but that alerts you that a new rule needs to be written for the future. So we have the no rules with the positive replacement behaviors. So let's talk about what is a consequence and what is its purpose. Think of it as this concrete wall here. Here's this person running towards it. So we have this brick wall here, and they're running towards it, and they go clang. He goes, oh man, I felt that. Let me run into that again. Clang. Man, that's kind of hard. Runs it into a third time. Woo, now he's dizzy. I don't feel so good. Maybe I shouldn't run into that anymore. Right? So that's what a consequence is. It's something that's not movable. Right? If you keep moving it back, or if you keep, not enforcing it, then it doesn't serve its purpose. It needs to be something that's firm, it's actionable, and that the child, can bump into a few times without being hurt. But it gives them little doses of frustration. A consequence is a small dose of frustration, which is really critical for human development. Because what's adulthood? We're dealing with large doses of frustration. And if we're preparing our children to succeed at each level that they get to, middle school, high school, either college or employment, whatever they're doing after post-high school, there's bigger and bigger risks, consequences, and there's more frustration involved, right? So each one is a little inoculation, a little frustration vaccine, so to speak, that builds up your child's immunity. So you're giving them a real gift, love and limits. All right, so there's that. And so now a consequence should be proactive and anticipatory. Don't change the rules on the fly. That is, every kid knows it's not fair to change the rules of the game in the middle. So, quick example, my son violated a rule. We had a rule about cell phone use. And so the rule was all cell phones need to be used on the ground floor. They're also charged there. They also can't go into second floor bathrooms or anything. And so that was just our terms of use, our user agreement. And so one time he snuck it. It was up there, so he lost it for the next day. But then he lost it. And he lost it another couple times before he ran into it the third time and said, "Oh man, I don't want to lose my phone the next day. I'm going to be better about that." Except then he got a little sneaky. So then his phone was charging, but then my wife was changing the sheets, and then she saw between the bed and the wall there was an older generation of iPhone that we had lying around next to his bed charging. We're like, what? Well, this is a different rule, because now we're talking about sneakiness, and that impacts relationships. That's different than misusing an object. Now we're talking about, knowing this is willful. So we're like, okay, we need to create a new rule. If you're sneaky or lying, you lose that object for a week, because that is our relationship. Critical. So we couldn't consequence them. We didn't have a rule about it, about sneakiness. But kids come up with new and creative behaviors all the time. We talked about it offline, came back and said, here's the new rule. And believe it or not, he needed to have that consequence. He lost his phone for one whole week. One time he did another round of sneakiness, and that was the last time. But that's what a consequence is for, right? They learn from it. It also means that you don't have to lecture over and over, because the consequence stands for your message, right? So that's what it means to be proactive and anticipatory and not changing the rules. And so what is a consequence? Bang your head here, and man, when you stop, it's going to feel so good, right? And so this becomes your child's decision-making matrix. So here's how you can apply consequences. Here are a few different options for you. Option one are natural consequence. Okay, natural consequence is simply letting something not work out and without you rescuing them. So like life happens and your child doesn't like the outcome. So my example that I use is, imagine your child, has a friend, and then unexpectedly was not invited to the birthday party. And you're like, well, what happened? What happened? You talk to school and find out, oh, your child happened to be mean to the birthday child for a few times over, actually. And they were kind of targeting them. And so then they got uninvited. Well, the parent didn't know. So on the back end, you say, well, you weren't invited. We just found out about this. So how do you think that worked out for you? You were mean to them and you wanted to go to this great party. They're all doing laser tag. It's so much fun. How do you feel about that? On a scale of 1 to 10, kid goes, pretty bad. Like, I'm going to miss out. Everyone's going to be there. Yeah, so that didn't really work out. You're pretty upset about that. Would you want this to happen again? Great question to ask. Do you want to feel this way again? The child goes, no. Okay, so what can you do next time to make sure that it doesn't happen? This conversation only happens if you don't rescue. If you call the other kid's parents and say, can't he come? He's going to miss out. It's not fair. You've undone this great learning opportunity, right? Natural consequences. Let things not work out and then process it on the back end for deep learning opportunities. Okay, yeah, so make sure that even if you're frustrated, make sure that you are not targeting someone, you're not mean, use kind words. Let's problem solve other things that you can say if you're frustrated with someone, right? It all becomes social learning off of the consequence. Okay, so those are natural consequences. Life happens. Now, option 2 are logical consequences, and these would be consequences that you apply. And the simple formula for this is separate your child from the object that's being misused or the person that's being mistreated. So let's say you want your child, you write a no rule that says, don't stay on devices for more than 5 minutes after you're asked to come off. Do rule, transition, turn off and put down your device within 5 minutes after being asked. Okay, consequence, if you don't do these transitions well, then you will lose it for the next day, for instance. So it's the device itself, iPad, iPhone, they lose it if they're not using it properly. A couple little qualifiers for this. If this happens first thing in the morning, it's a weekend day and your child's going to not have it the entire day, it's super long time, you can say, you know what? If you are really contributing to the family, if you are, kind, following all the rules, you can get it back around 5 o'clock. You can get it back after dinner time. So you can give them an opportunity to earn it back based on expected behaviors if you want to be nice about it. But they should lose it for a while if they, the next day. So it happens on Friday night. They begin the day on Saturday without it, but then you say they can earn it back for like Saturday night if you want to do that. That gives them a little motivation of something to do to earn it back, so you can do that. If it happens, if a violation happens, at 9 o'clock at night, or 8 o'clock at night, it's the end of the night, it wraps around to the next day. If something happens early in the morning, you could say you lose it today. Just WPP it, write down the consequence and the specifics of it. You lose it the rest of today and tomorrow, whatever it is. But consequences do not need to be heavy. Again, this is not punishment and pain, because if so, your child's going to lose the message. We're trying to accomplish something. We want them to learn something, right? So small bits of frustration, 2 or 3 times to get it. Oh, I don't want that to happen again. Oh, man, I felt that on my head. I'm going to work harder to transition off of my screen, for example. Same thing with people. Your child is being unkind to their sibling. All right, 2 of you, separate, 15 minutes, different floors, different rooms, whatever you want to do. So separate them from people if things are breaking down. Briefly, for that could be 15 minutes. Often 15 minutes is all your child needs to kind of pull it together and get back to more positive interaction. Okay. All right, I said that. So, and these once again come down to if-thens. If you are unkind to someone, then you need to perform a gesture to make amends. You could do that too. There could be a gesture. If you make a mess or break something, then after you calm down, you might need to be a part of fixing it or working to pay for its repairs. If your child is too young to repair something, and you have to have a contractor come in, they have to sit and watch the contractor. This is how you repair a wall if you kicked a hole in drywall. If then. So these are just some examples for you. And so out of the ashes of a consequence, your child, like the phoenix, can be reborn a better self, having learned a lesson. And here's the last thing we're going to get to today. Okay. Deal breaker behaviors. These are the big ticket items. Remember early on, if you were with us, there's the walls of deal breaker behaviors around the squiggly lines. So if your child is doing something that's dangerous or destructive, if they are bullying or threatening anyone in the family, including you, adults, not okay. These are not okay. These are not within your family values. If they have complete refusal to either work with you on schoolwork or social coaching, if they're purely refusing to do therapy, or if they flip the I don't care switch, all of these things are things that are either going to be harmful to others or they're keeping your child stuck. And your child has too much power, which is dangerous for a child and their development. So here's a way for you to sort of take back control, right, while still giving the child a sense of control and choice. So we call this the family plan versus the kid plan. And this is in case of emergency, break glass. This is your last ditch kind of a thing to start to shape behavior. And so we talk about the family plan versus the kid plan. And you're going to frame these first, you're going to frame these two plans. So I'll use my son, Sam. So if you're on the Sam plan, or versus the Fogel family plan. Okay, so, and I'll tell my child, okay, our family, we are really fortunate. We have all these really great things that you get to use, like video games, you have an iPhone, you have sports, we have all these great things, desserts. We are so fortunate, right? But these things are all privileges, right? For older kids, I'll say, is there anything in the Bill of Rights that says that you have a God-given right to 3 hours of iPad time, of video game time? No, there's nothing in there. These are privileges, okay? Now the privileges and the grown-ups pay for everything. So these are all privileges that we've given you out of the kindness of our hearts. But if you're going to be using these privileges, you're expected to really follow the Fogel family plan, the family plan. Now, the Sam plan is you're doing whatever you want, whatever Sam wants to do. If you're doing whatever you want to do, you are being mean to your sister. You're torturing your sister. You are refusing therapy. You're totally yelling and dominating everyone. That's what you want to do. That's the Sam plan, but that's not the family plan, okay? So if you are choosing to be on the Sam plan, okay, which you're entitled to, then you're not choosing the family plan, the Fogel plan. You're not choosing to have all those privileges. The Sam, you don't have any money. You don't have a job. You didn't pay for an iPhone in the video game system. So therefore, if you're on the Sam plan, you are choosing to not have all these things. You're choosing to lose these privileges. If you're on the Fogel family plan, if you are going to therapy, if you are doing whatever you have to do, then you get to keep these privileges. You decide. So you go back and forth between what the family plan is, what you're doing, and the positive consequences you get, and you lose these things. If your child violates one of these rules, and for these kids, in many cases, it's a switch to flip in their mind. I work with kids face to face who are unbelievably oppositional at Camp Pegasus, and we use this plan, that Camp Pegasus plan versus the Johnny plan, and sometimes we had to quote unquote freeze them out. If they were being completely mean and bullying other kids, just totally not listening, doing dangerous things, hopscotching back and forth across a creek that was dangerous, okay, pause. Your day's paused until you decide. Okay, you can flip the switch, Camp Pegasus plan or the Johnny plan, right? The Fogel family plan or the Sam plan. You decide. And you get the privileges that you want. If you could choose, what would you want to keep all these privileges? Yes, right? So That is how this works. Okay, and you have to wait the child out, because your child might say like, no, and they'll be mean. But if they violate it, you're going around the house getting their chargers. You might be picking up their iPhone. You may have to put away certain remote controls so that they can't turn things on. And then you wait, and then they come back. You're being mean. It's not fair. You decide. You decide. So ultimately, you are wresting back control the whole time, giving the child control to decide. Hope that makes sense. We do not have time for bonus slides, so let's do in conclusion, everyone. All right, so we talked about the difference between increased behaviors and decreased behaviors. Increased behaviors you want to reinforce and reward, TPR and possibly a reward system. Decreased behaviors get the rewards, get consequences. Sorry, there's seems to be some construction nearby. We talked about the 𝗷cie method, emphasizing creating a holding environment with really logical, strategic limits and consequences, right? And here is the YouTube channel. So this is the QR code that can take you there if you want to look up some of the other videos as resources, all free for you. And here again is my social emotional guidebook. If you're interested in purchasing it, it's the QR code on the left. Okay. The things we talked about today, excerpt portions of the social emotional guidebook. All right. And there we have it. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate your joining us. And I'm going to sign off because we have this awful sound. My email address is here. If you have any questions, if you have follow-ups, feel free to ask me. Also, this video will be posted on the YouTube channel, so you can rewatch it, you can share it with others. Please like it and subscribe, all right? Everyone, take care, happy consequencing, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.